Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Fulfillment Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Goulas, and this week, my guest is founder of the Nason Group and experience evangelist, Shawn Nason. Welcome, Shawn.
Hey man, how are you doing there?
Doing great, doing great. How
Awesome.
about yourself?
Doing great, Dave. Excited to be
Cool.
here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. So you've got quite a diverse background. Can you just walk us through your career and business journey up until where you are now?
I can. It took me a couple years to be able to get my elevator pitch. And if you go out and you follow me on LinkedIn now, I got my elevator pitch down to about 15 seconds. And it's there in my profile, and it's simply this. I'm what happens when a musician and pastor turns a Walt Disney Imagineer, turns chief experience officer, founder, and author, gets and beats cancer, and then turns a CEO to help humanize the world one person at a time. So I tell people I'm in my fifth, going on my sixth career at the age of 51. And it's been an incredible journey, lots of learnings, some learnings that I hope others don't ever have to learn. But yeah, got a pretty diverse background there.
Okay, yeah, that's a whole lot to unpack. S- So let's start with the music. So you were a musical prodigy, if I understand that right?
I was, yeah. So just I come from a really musical family, um, and my whole family has studied or been in music really my whole life. My brother still to this day is, but it just came really naturally to me. Um, and I think that was frustrating or not frustrating to some people in my family. But yeah, so play the piano and sing, and have done that, singing all my whole life, and then started playing piano when I was about 13. So going on about 40 years now, and never had a piano lesson. So just sat down and was able to play piano and read music. I don't play classical music, but everything else I do play.
Okay, wow. That's impressive, right? To just be able to, it just came natural to you where you didn't even need lessons.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And then so you studied music in college and then you went on to be a professional musician touring and you ended up leaving that field because you weren't fulfilled?
Yeah, if anyone has ever done the touring life, it's a taxing life. Um, I enjoyed it. But yeah, it was not something that I think I wanted to do full time. And so that opened my door up to because I traveled professionally in the Christian music field. So it opened my door up to pursue a passion, to begin to help people. And that's when I stepped in and for 10 years and was a pastor. I did music pastoring, did youth pastoring, we young adult pastoring, did all of that up until 2005.
Okay. And then that's when you went to Disney?
2005, went to Disney, started there. My agreement with my wife, we lived in Orlando, um, is I would go to work for Disney, but I didn't want to do entertainment anymore. So I actually, part of being a prodigy with the music is I'm really good with numbers. And so I actually went into finance when I was at Disney and stayed in finance my whole journey at Disney from 2005 to 2011. And
Okay.
went back and got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in finance. Worked my way in very different positions within the company, but ultimately, my last 4 years at Disney was spent as a Walt Disney Imagineer.
Okay. So tell us about that. Like what's a day in the life of an Imagineer like?
Yeah, I tell people it's not any different than anyone else, except our jobs were to create and then to bring stuff to life. So you go right on a ride at Disney. That all started with Imagineering. You go stay at a resort. That all started with Imagineering. You go on their cruise ships, which I was really honored to be a part of. That all started with Imagineering. So, I think in what other companies could either call R&D or innovation, Walt Disney Imagineering encompassed all of that into one space, and had, amazing times. I got to be a part of rides, resorts, cruise ships, real estate, acquisitions, and got to see great things and learned how to think with an experienced mind first. So, the one thing Disney always does is they think about the guest experience. And every decision is made based on how does that ultimately affect what I would call the 4-year-old princess or the 4-year-old pirate, and that experience of them coming to the park.
Do you think that was a pivotal point in your career? Because going into some of your later business stuff, you're very outspoken about the customer experience and the human experience as a driving force behind your companies now and what you do. I mean, do you think that that Disney time and really being in a position where it was your job to be creative and imagine what the experience could be? Do you think that helped shape where you are now?
Oh, absolutely. And I tell people it's probably not fair to most organizations or to most people when they, you know, work around me or work with me, because my very first corporate job was Disney. And so when I left Disney and started to work in other arenas and other industries, I thought all companies worked like Disney. And so come to find out they don't. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely the driver. It's in my blood to this day, and I left the company 12 years ago. And it still drives me in every decision. We are still huge Disney fans. Um, if people could see what was behind me, there's all kinds of Disney stuff behind me. We are huge Disney fans and are very thankful for our time there and for what I learned there and how I learned how to not only treat, and I don't want to say guest experience, and this is where you'll see this a lot of what I talk about on LinkedIn, but the human experience. What is the human experience when you interact with the brand or interact with another associate or interact with the vendor? What's the human experience like? Because it's much broader than just a customer experience or consumer experience or employee experience. It's much broader than that. And I've talked a lot about it as the experience ecosystem.
Yeah, and that's something you're very vocal about on LinkedIn and with some of your other social posts. How how big of a problem, I guess, would you say it is today in terms of companies not focusing on the human experience and just more so just being the driver in terms of strictly profits and bottom line and that sort of thing, rather than putting the customer first and really actually caring about the customer experience?
Yeah, it's a hard situation because there are organizations and companies doing really well that don't do that. Um, and they may be profitable, but people are miserable that work for them, right? And so I just tell people, and there's a quote out there that I use a lot, that if you get the human experience right, you'll get the numbers you need. So treat humans right, employees, guests, whoever it might be, vendors, treat humans right, you'll get the financial numbers that you need. And it has to be more of a long-term gain than a short-term gain. And unfortunately, in business, And remember, I have a finance background too. We think very short-sighted of what's the instant thing that we can get now to get the numbers we need, and don't look at the long-term game. And so I absolutely believe that it's crucial to any business. And at some point, a business has to look back on that and they realize they've done something wrong.
Yeah, and you talk about successful companies like on paper doing well and profitable, but their employees, their whole team, are miserable. What do you like? What does that do long term? In terms of, do you think it makes their success sustainable?
I think eventually they suffer. It may not be initially, but eventually they suffer. Um, because they start to see, the churn and burn aspect within their organization, and employees start to leave. Um, and especially in the day, listen, I'm doing a whole bunch of posts right now on LinkedIn around purpose and purpose in the workplace and what that's like. And we live in a society today that wants to be purpose driven and wants to know their why and live into their why. And so if you can do that in the workplace, what better place to do it? And then we have, the millennials, Gen Z, those generations who won't take the BS that, us Gen Xers and Gen Yers and, baby boomers in particular took. You don't go to work for a company and stay with them for 30 years, even if you're miserable. No. Up and coming generations just will leave. And so there's a lot at play and at stake with this one.
Okay. And I just want to jump into another quote that kind of dovetails into something. One of the quotes you said, and I think it was after your experience within higher education, but you said you believe higher education is the next bubble to burst. Can you talk
Yeah,
more about that?
yeah, I still believe that it's on the cusp of bursting. And we're seeing it with the movement of, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and my 15-year-old daughter is talking to us about not going to college because she doesn't see any reason for it, for what she wants to do in her life, or she can go to a more non-traditional type program to get what she wants to do. Listen, higher ed just continually is on this rise of tuition. But then there's this thing that no one talks about publicly called the discount rate. So, if, let's say, just a university is charging $50,000, that's their published rate, but every student gets a 40% discount rate. That means 20% comes off, or 20,000 comes off that 50,000. So the cost to the university is really only 30,000, because they use federal money to cover that discount rate. So why don't you really just say your tuition cost is 30,000, not 50,000? It's all an optics game, and the only way to make more money right now in higher ed for people that still think traditionally is to continue to raise tuition. And I've also gone on record to state, and I would state it again here, that I think one of the biggest things that have caused this whole out of balance that's happened in higher education is the concept of tenure. So you have faculty that sit with tenure that aren't required to do anything different. So they just do what they're supposed to do, and you can't fire those people. And so they can actually not do what they're supposed to do, and you still can't fire them.
Attention manufacturers and e-commerce sellers. Is fulfillment a headache for you? Whether you're fulfilling in-house and you know you need to outsource, or you're with another 3PL, you know you deserve better service, Easy DC 3PL can help. We offer personal service, fast response time, and we're flexible to meet your unique needs. Get in touch today and find out how we can help you. Yeah, and one of the biggest criticisms about college today and the value of college, particularly coming from various entrepreneurs, is that if you look at even in the past 10 years, let's say how much our world has changed, is college hasn't, and the college education hasn't kept up with the pace of change in the world, and the value is diminished significantly in terms of today's world. Do you think that's a big reason why, in terms of that there's so many people there that are doing the same things and are not required or even incentivized to change?
Absolutely. And so let's take what's on everybody's mind right now, right? AI, artificial intelligence. Is the speed in which artificial intelligence is moving, can you actually stay atop of that if you're in a traditional 4-year degree program? Because think about where AI was 4 years ago. And if you are a senior graduating today, this like in the next few weeks, right? Or even already started to graduate, have those programs in the last 4 years kept you up to date where AI is, or is it still stuff in the past? Because if you're not relevant for the market today, whether you have a degree or not, you're not going to get hired. So there is a huge disconnect.
And so what you say is on the cusp of bursting. Where do you see that going in the next 5 years?
Well, enrollment's going to go down. And when enrollment goes down, then budgets aren't met. And so, and we're already starting to see it. It just doesn't get talked about a ton, Dave. Like, liberal arts universities are struggling to stay afloat today, because they are typically small schools, less than 3,000. Some are maybe a little, but they give a well-rounded critical thinking education, but it's not always staying relevant to where today is. So as enrollment continues to go down and these smaller schools continue to struggle, we're just going to see more schools and more universities start to close.
Okay. Um, so going back to after Disney, now you got recruited into healthcare. And what like that's quite a shift. Like to talk about what that was like.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it was a shift, but it wasn't a huge shift because I went from Disney, where I focused on experience, and I was hired into healthcare to help focus on member and patient experience. So it was just in a different field, but all the same principles apply when it comes to experience. And so it was a lot to learn. But people said to me, well, when you went to healthcare, it was such a more highly regulated industry. And I kind of laughed because I tell people, I don't think it was any more highly regulated than the attraction industry. Because I don't know about you, Dave, but I know about me that 99.9% of the time, I don't want for a roller coaster to work right. I want a roller coaster to work 100% of the time. So it's a very highly regulated industry in the ride industry and what Disney does, particularly with rides, right? So it's not any more regulated in healthcare than it is. It's a different type of regulation. So I sit and I look at what healthcare is going through, yet they continue to stay very isolated and within their own bubbles, and don't look outside to other industries to see how they're managing experience. I talked about the finance industry. Are you happy with your bank, Dave, if they get your deposits right 99.9% of the time?
That again, that's something you want 100% of the time.
So, but yet the financial industry has seemed to keep up with so many things. They're still behind in some, but so many innovations, so many things. But yet today, even healthcare is still so far behind other industries when it comes to the experience realm.
And through your experience in healthcare and a couple different companies, that led you to start Mofi, which is a boutique consulting firm. Can you just talk about the mission of Mofi and what
Yeah,
it's done?
it's pretty simple, you know. We look at the experience ecosystem. Um, and it goes back to me, it's around humanizing the experience world. And so what I realized is I was really disruptive to live with inside an organization at the time. And so my message and what I wanted to say was better received if I was sitting in a consultant role than as an employee or an associate role. And so that's why we started it. And we've done amazing things and amazing projects over the last 7 years.
Yeah, and you've got quite a list of clients too, in terms of you have Disney on there, you have Humana, several other bit like larger companies. I mean, when you first started, it clearly had relationships from your experience, but were you able to land clients right away and make the business successful right off the bat?
Absolutely. We've been very fortunate. And I think I also launched it in the right time when experience was really hot and heavy and people were trying to figure things out. And now that experience innovation world is going through kind of a change. So in that, we are going through kind of a change of what's the next iteration of what Mofi is going to be.
Okay. And clearly you went through several different careers, you had success, but changed ultimately. Did you ever have moments where you struggled with like self-doubt and setbacks and kind of uncertainty?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how, as an entrepreneur, you don't go through those moments, um, or as a small business owners, um, especially when you hit hard times, and the past couple of years has been a kind of an interesting space in the consulting world, and there has been some moments where I've thought, is this really what I want to do anymore? Um, do I want to live in this space? And so you have to know, and you have to surround yourself. You'll hear me talk a lot about it if you follow me on LinkedIn about your swarm, and you have to surround yourself with your swarm, and those people that will keep you protected and loved in those moments when you're really struggling.
Is that your main way to deal with it is just having other supportive, uh, loyal people around you that can lift you up even when you're going through a hard time and feeling down?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, along with the business, you've got a lot of different personal branding stuff you do. So you're a public speaker, you're an author, you're a podcast host. So how like where did that come from? What made you decide to start a podcast?
In full transparency, it was the pandemic and I was bored. And so um I I went from being a road warrior, traveling, as a consultant, you travel a whole lot. And I went from that to overnight almost stopping to travel. And so about 6 weeks into that, I decided I'm going to launch a podcast. And so we launched a podcast. Um, and even now we're in the process of um, redefining what that podcast will be going forward. So we've taken a break the first part of this year, and we'll relaunch the second part of the year um, as we get, you know, making sure that we're still being relevant. I think the biggest thing for me and the biggest piece of advice to say to entrepreneurs and to business owners is Every year, you need to stop and look and see if what you're doing is still relevant and still meeting the needs of those that you serve. And if you need to tweak it, it's okay to tweak it. This will probably be the fourth or fifth time we've tweaked what Mophie is and is going to be. And I'm okay with that.
You think that's something a lot of entrepreneurs get wrong in terms of once they get in the groove of having a business and having employees and expenses and numbers to hit, customers to satisfy, where they kind of just get to a point where maybe they're going through the motions to a certain degree?
Yeah, I do. I don't think they stop and take the time to look at the big picture and where the industry and where trends are going. And before they know it, they're outdated.
And with the podcast too, what do you think's been the best part about that for you?
Oh, the relationships and the people I've got to meet. We've done 100 and something episodes. And, those are all people that I feel like I could reach out to today and call as my friend. So it's by far the relationship and the conversations we've had on those episodes.
Okay. And also you've written two books. One specifically is called Kiss Your Dragons. And it kind of runs contrary to, the phrase that's often out there. And I instantly think of like the hero's journey, and it talks about slaying the dragon, right? Is the common when you think about a dragon. So can you talk about what kissing the dragon is and where that came from?
Absolutely. So again, I'm going to be fully transparent with your listeners. This book came about during the pandemic in 2020. And after I had launched, and the team and I had launched the podcast, you'll find a common thread here. I got bored again. And I said, let's go write the second book. And so um, started to we talk a lot in the work that we do about mindsets, but we realize that we have this thing called heart sets as well. And how do you mesh those together? And really the concept of kiss your dragons is addressing your fears. And so you'll see in the book, if you read the book, we talk and we use the metaphor of the movies, How to Train Your Dragon. And then How to Train Your Dragon, you had Toothless and Hiccup. And that they were the main characters, right? For the movie. And we talk about in that, if they would not have done what they had done, their society would not have changed. And so people, if you haven't seen the movie, I would say you have to go see it to totally understand it. Because this young man who has been trained his whole life, and his name is Hiccup, that his whole life to be scared of dragons. They were Vikings, and they were to slay dragons, just like you talked about. But one day, Hiccup meets Toothless. And instead of killing this dragon, he becomes friends. And throughout this journey, Toothless and Hiccup become, inseparable. And by the end of the journey, now they're using dragons to help fulfill needs that need to be met within their society. And no longer are they slaying them, but they're leaning into them, and we use the term, they're leaning into them to kiss their dragons. And so when you think about that and you go on that journey, many times the things that we fear the most in our life, if we would just lean into it and embrace it and kiss it, it could actually become one of our best friends.
Um, Powerful metaphor. Okay. Um, and something else that you've dealt with recently that you're very vocal about too is when you're diagnosed with cancer and then you beat cancer. Can you talk about that journey and then what that's done for you?
Yeah, listen, it changed my life. 49 years old, went in for a traditional colonoscopy, and woke up and found out that I had stage 3 colon cancer. Had no symptoms, had not struggled with anything. So, first off, to anyone listening, preventative care. If you're a man and you're 45 or older and you haven't had a colonoscopy, go get one. Rumor has it that they're getting ready to lower the age to 40 because it is the fastest growing cancer that are killing people, and will take over all other cancers by 2027. It's also got one of the fastest growing young diagnosis. Um, so people in their 20s and 30s are getting diagnosed with this more and more. Um, Went through 10 months of treatment, 12 rounds of chemo, came out of that, and going to turn 50, right when I came out of that, and realized that living your purpose and your why and living every day is the most important thing. And so, on top of all the other things in my life that I love to do, I also have this mission, and particularly mission for men to help men live into their purpose and their why, in their life, so they can be better fathers, husbands, partners, friends, business owners, business people, um, and to learn to embrace who they are and to live that throughout their life.
Okay. Now, so is that something you're doing with the Nason group in terms of that mission?
Starting with the Nation Group. Yep. Yep. I
Okay.
will be very soon launching a community, taken actually from the metaphor out of the book. Instead of a tribe, we call it a swarm. And the community will be called the Swarm.
And how big of an issue is that? Because we talk so much about mental health and people struggling with that these days. Do you see a correlation there where, particularly men oftentimes are, the providers and whatnot, and just given the way, careers may unfold or whatnot, people get stuck in these careers or jobs that they don't like, they're not fulfilled, and it leads to so many other issues and problems. I mean, how big of an issue is that today?
I just read a study this past week. 85% of men in America, so I don't think it's different from anywhere else, deal with loneliness, because men don't do a really good job at communicating and talking about what's going on. Um, I joke around, I use this analogy. Women, they get together with their girlfriends, you know, once a week, twice a month, whatever, once a month. They go have appetizers and wine, and they drink, and they, you know, for lack of better terms, they do all their bitching about what's going on in their life and with their families or how much their husbands are driving them crazy. They have this great girls' night out. They hug and they leave and they go back to their life, but they've got that out. Men, we go hang out together. And this is a general statement, so I don't want to say this is for everybody, but you go to a ball game or you go to a sports bar, you watch sports, you eat your food, you drink a beer, you leave, you chest pump, and you go get in your car. And you've never talked about anything meaningful or thoughtful or what's really going on inside of your life. And so um, I realized this right before the pandemic hit, even in my own life, that I woke up one morning and realized I travel for work, so I don't have friends where I live. Um, I'm a business owner. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And I'm trying to manage all of this, and yet had this sense of loneliness, even though I had tons of people surrounding me. So I think it's a huge deal today.
Okay. And so this community too is with the aim of just for men and getting them to have some camaraderie and actually an outlet to help talk about what's really going on.
Yeah, it's a personal and professional growth community that will happen. So it's not just about talking about the stuff going on, but also there to help each other and embrace what's going on in business. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of men that are in careers that need this in their space. So uh, it's really about providing that safe place for men. It will be a highly curated small group. And so we're excited about that. Hopefully to launch very soon with that.
Okay. And if people want to get in touch with you and learn more about the other projects that you have, what's the best way people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can either find me on LinkedIn or ShawnNason.com. Everything's right there.
Okay. And we'll link that in the show notes as well. All
Awesome.
right. Shawn, thanks so much for taking the time and sharing your journey with us. And we'll look out for your new projects coming. And that's all the time we have for now. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.